Hey everybody! In this video we're going to share with you how we make a 4x10 flat, much like the ones behind me with this forest graphic on there. If you guys are ever needing a flat for any reason, whether it be for a haunt panels, maze walls, facades, or some kind of theatrical set that you're working on, this is a nice simple construction layout that's easy to do. So come on, let's get started. Here are the parts. Basically you've got a top and bottom rail, you've got the two sides and a center stile or stud, and then you've got 8 toggles that make up the inside framing, and then you've got the sheet of Luan that's stapled and glued to the underside here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all my material. I'm going to be using 1x3 for the framing. The flats I'm going to be making are 4x10, so since I'm going to use a rail on either end that's going to be 3/4 of an inch thick, I'm going to cut my studs at 9 foot 10.5 inches. Another thing to mention before cutting is if you have multiple flats that you're making, it helps to save time if you stack up a bunch of pieces, mark the top one, and then just make sure you're flush at the end. That way when you cut, you're cutting through more than one at once. Alright, so I just finished cutting all my pieces. I have enough pieces here to make 3 different flats. I've got all my rails, my top and bottom rails, and then I've got all my studs right here. I'm getting ready to mark all my 2-foot centers for each one of the toggles, and since the toggles are 3/4 of an inch thick, I just need to make sure that each one of my 2-foot marks I go over 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so the first thing before I take my measurement, I made sure all my studs are flush with each other. I clamped them into place. I'm going to take my tape measure, make sure that I'm on the outside of that rail, and I'm just going to run it all the way down. And then I'm going to mark my 2-foot centers. Okay, so once all your studs are marked, you just have to make one mark for the center stud on the top and bottom rails. So I've got them all clamped together, making sure the edge was straight, and I just have to make that 2 3/8. You can do another mark too. Alright, so now that I have all my markings for where the toggles and the studs and stuff are going to go, I'm going to get ready to shoot it. Now you can use you can pre-drill and use screws or a finished nail. I use a staple gun. The staples that I use they're 16 gauge staples with a 7/16 crown, and they're 1 3/4 inches long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue each one of the boards and then just put 2 staples in. You don't have to worry so much about the flushness on the back edge. You're just worried about this face where the plywood's going to go. So you don't have to be too worried about making sure your frame is square, because when you go to shoot your plywood on there, that'll take care of all that for you. A lot of people build jigs, and that's helpful in that way. I tend to not like a jig because it seems to get in the way for me. You can wipe off any excess glue here. Okay, so I have the 2 outside studs and the center stud shot in place. Now I'm going to do the toggles. I'm going to start with one side. So I got 4 that are kind of getting to place. Make sure you put glue on both sides. This one, let's get it down there. It's flush there. Alright, so I have all this side all finished. I've kind of wiped off some of the excess glue. Now I'm moving on to this side. Now these ones are a little bit trickier, but let me show you. Get some glue on here. Now since I can't use a staple gun to that side, typically what I do is I hold it at an angle, kind of lined up with the other corner of that side. I'll shoot 2 staples in, and then I just bend it, shoot this side in, and then I take a hammer, beat it right to that one. Alright, so once you get both sides in, it's always a good idea to run your tape measure, make sure you're at 4 feet, or even just slightly under, like a 16th. But if you're over, you need to go ahead and take the time to pop these out, trim a little bit more off, because when you go to skin this thing, your sheet's only 4 foot wide, and you don't want your framing to stick out past your sheet goods, so it's always good to check as you're going. And then I just wipe off any excess glue that might be around any of the corners. Now you're ready for your sheet.